Hey y'all, welcome to Waterbreak with Gabe and Annie, husband and wife duo.
Hello.
Water boy, water girl.
Yes.
You know, if you guys want to be in a conversation with us or ask questions like many of you already have, go and email us at renchmedia@gmail.com. renchmedia@gmail.com. And also, I forget your Instagram handle, but that's probably another good place to follow us on your Instagram handle.
Yeah, Annie M. Wrench.
Annie M. Wrench. So Instagram, Annie M. Wrench.
That's right. That's where you can find me.
You'll see a lot of, that's where you go. You start little fires over there.
Kind of,
Instagram,
yeah, sometimes.
So,
unpopular opinions.
Good information, what my wife's been working on over there and kind of all her knowledge of building up on 20 years. Is it 20 years? 2005? Yeah, it's getting close.
Almost, yeah.
Getting
Almost
close.
20.
Yeah. And everything. So today's topic, I know Neil's already going to steal the language. He's already going to force us into this language. It's kind of thinking about your long-term health and what we would call, the buzzword would be for us Christians is PostMil health. Now I know a lot of you guys probably don't even know what PostMil theology is, PostMil millennialism, PostMil theology is. And so we're actually going to kind of start there. This might be kind of you're like, what is PostMil health? That's an odd term. And especially talking about like theology and health. Why do you guys do that? Why do you guys start that way? Well, me and Annie are Christians, and so the Bible is our driver for how we read anything, how we read politics, how we read our health, how we read family life. It all kind of comes through there. And so post-mill theology is kind of a principle. It's more than a principle, but it's kind of a theology that kind of influences us in how we view the world, not just how we view health, but how we view everything. God designed us this heart, mind, soul, and strength, which is why I think why our listeners on our show we're constantly going back to the Bible, because we believe that God designed us this way. We don't go back to the CDC or FDA. We go back to the Bible and all this. So let me just summarize this, and then I hope it connects to the rest of our conversation and how we're going to talk about long-term health. The idea of post-mill theology is basically when Adam sinned and fell in the garden, then that kind of began the curse, that began the kind of decline of our world. And that's why you see in the beginning of scriptures, you see, Noah's living hundreds and hundreds of years, people were living a long time because that decline had begun in Adam. That decline and that curse affected everything. Curse affected the weeds in the garden. It affected the pain that women experience in childbirth. So the curse wasn't just an agnostic kind of spiritual curse. It actually affected our land and affected our bodies. And so Adam fell. Well, you fast forward 2,000 years later, and I know I'm really skipping a lot, but you fast forward 2,000 years later, well, Jesus died and rose again. And when Jesus died and rose again, that was the hinge on which history now began to deal with that curse and finally put a nail in that coffin. And now we're in a situation where the curse is won. Jesus died and rose again, and he defeated the curse as far as the curse is found, and he's chasing it out of our land. And so because of that, you see in Isaiah 65, you see that and when he prophesied about the new heavens and new earth, that you won't live to be less than 100 years old. You that Jesus's work in the garden not only affected our heart condition with the Lord, but I believe it's actually going to impact how we live in the future. And so when Jesus died and rose again, he's fighting that curse. He put a nail in that curse, and of course the Bible promises that final nail in the curse, that final nail in the coffin, will actually be death itself. So sin and death itself. And so I think this actually is kind of a helpful way to kind of think about, and this is one of the, I'd say, underlying theology that affects me and Annie, and how, especially how Annie views health and fitness. So we believe that we should think about our bodies in the long run, not in the short run.
Yeah,
that's kind of a post-mill, lens that we have on. We believe that we can actually fight cancer. We can actually fight obesity. We can actually fight all this stuff. But that's because the Bible gives us the foundation for how to think about these things. We don't compare how healthy or unhealthy we are, based off the world standards. We look at the scriptures and read through the Bible and look at the world through the Bible and deal with our health in relationship to the Bible. We measure up to the Bible. We don't measure up to the skinny person sitting next to me or the larger person standing next to me over here. We look at scriptures and how that affects us. So this is, I skipped so much, but this is basically what we call PostMil theology, is that Jesus died, rose again. He's fighting sin and death, and he's fighting the curses in this world in such a way that things are going to get better. I know we're right in the middle of, everyone thinks we're going to have World War III, stuff like that. I believe if Apostle Paul died in 65-ish AD, and if he came back now, there's probably maybe 15,000, 20,000 Christians when he died. And if he came back now, well, worldwide, there's about 2 billion Christians worldwide. And so I think things get better. The gospel works. The gospel gets better. More people are converted. And I think that also has practical ramifications for how we view health and fitness. So that's our underlying lens of how we look at health and fitness. So when you're wanting to talk about the practical side, baby, of kind of long-term health, thinking long-term about our health, is kind of where are you starting in this conversation?
Yeah. That is the question. So this is what we wanted to talk about today. I actually just made an Instagram post about it too. It's been on my mind. Yeah, it's been on my mind a lot over the last couple of years, especially just recently. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because I've been doing it for so long or because we're getting older. I don't know what it is, but just kind of this, I've just been really noticing that there's a big trend right now in health and fitness with so many of us just really only thinking very short term about our health. And just to be very specific, what I mean by that is, a lot of us just are not considering any of the long-term possible fallout that may come from something that we might do, be it a drug we decide to take, exercise prescription, a diet we decide to put ourselves on. We're just not thinking about, okay, what might this do to me?
In other words, we're kind of being heavily impacted by like the latest diet or the latest weight loss drug or something like that.
And which is not necessarily wrong, but we just seem to be very short-sighted. Like, okay, will this work for me now? I'll do it without really giving a lot of thought, or even maybe asking the right questions about, okay, but where's this going to put me in 10 years, right? And then I would say another thing I see here is just in terms of what our health and fitness goals even are in the first place. We tend to only think about the now, right? Like, what do I want right now? For the most part, it's either I want to be thinner, I want to lose weight, right? That's most women, honestly. And for the guys, it might be I want gains, I want to have more muscle, like right now. Rather than thinking like, okay, what in 10 years is going to benefit me? What in 20 years is going to benefit me? And what could I be doing right now to kind of get me there?
So you're saying a woman could lose weight in such a way where maybe in 10 years it wasn't a healthy decision?
100%. Yes, that is what I'm saying. And that if we are truly being post-millennial in the way, in the way that we're defining it, and if we're being wise enough to think long-term, that is really going to, that's going to change a lot of the decisions we make. And I just see a lot of that not going on right now. So that's why I wanted to talk about. And it's really funny. I was thinking about this over the last couple of days because I knew this what we were going to be talking about. And a lot of us are really actually quite good at thinking long term in other areas of our life. Like whether you're a post-mill Christian or not, like take sunscreen, for example. Like most of us know, hey, you're going to go out, on the beach and you're going to bake yourself in the sun. You're going to put on sunscreen because, when you're 60, you don't want to be a wrinkly, old, leathery lady. We all know that, right? With our kids, it's like, well, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to discipline our toddlers now because when they're teenagers, we want them to be good people,
faithful children.
Finances, we're all thinking long term. Like, what investments do I need to make? What kind of retirement am I going to have? What what am I going to be able to give to my children, pay for their college? So there's some sort of strange disconnect, as far as I can tell, with regards to like health and fitness in particular, where we're not thinking long term, and I'm seeing a lot of negatives play out over time, and that's why I wanted to talk about this stuff. So we can talk about some specific examples if you want.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was going to ask. What are some specific examples you have for I mean, I can think of, the food pyramid and the 90s and the fad diets in the 90s. What are some examples that you have where it's like, okay, we were doing this 30 years ago, and here's some of the ramifications of what just happened.
That's true. Oh, actually, that's a really good point. And I'm going to pin the 90s thing, because I'm going to pin the 90s. I'm going to come right back to it.
Okay, because I grew up in that.
I know you did.
Def Leppard.
So did most of the people listening to this podcast.
Some of the best classic rock came out of the 90s.
Okay, so here, I'm going to give you guys some examples of what I'm talking about, of just where basically we might be tempted, some examples of things that we might be tempted to do or not do right now that could one way or another really hurt us long term. Okay. And the first example I want to bring up is a starvation diet by any name. Okay. And these are all very popular right now. And I will explain
define
myself.
Starvation diet. I've heard of, fasting.
Yeah. Well, most people don't use that word because it's a hard sell. Would you like to do my starvation diet?
Okay, so most likely this would be like a bad way of fasting or something.
I'll let you know. I think fasting could be included, but I'm using the word starvation diet very intentionally because if y'all can get your categories right with regards to paradigms of eating or not eating, it will really, really help you. And so any diet that or program or meal replacement system or drug, anything that will cause you to chronically long-term undereat, like grossly undereat, that would be a starvation diet, okay? And again, they masquerade by many, many names. So aggressively over-fasting, perfect example. If you're OMADing every single day, if you're doing...
What's OMADing?
OMAD, remember we talked about... you got to learn these acronyms.
I don't know these acronyms.
OMAD, one meal a day. It's very popular
OMAD,
right now, where you only eat one meal a day. And there's a lot of ladies out there, maybe some gentlemen too, who are truly only OMAD. That's all they do. It's not like... I'm not talking to the people who maybe toss one in once a month. I'm talking about the people who do it every day, right? That would be that's starvation, right? I mean, because you're barely eating. You're eating one meal a day. Exactly. I mean, but there's a lot of other things. Any kind of meal replacement program where you're grossly under eating, you're just eating 3 little, meal replacement bars for your meals every day. That's a good example of that. There's a lot of programs out there that kind of operate that way. If you're on a GLP-1 peptide, and those are really hot right now. It's just basically one of the newer, latest weight loss drugs. I'm not totally against them. They're actually quite amazing. I think there's a place for them, but and they do fun things like sensitize insulin and work on GLP-1 and do all those great things. But one of the biggest mechanisms that makes them effective is that they cause you to not be hungry. So it's very easy, especially if you're on a higher dose for a long time, to grossly undereat. And so really recognize that. There's so many things that are in right now, all masquerading as healthy or as weight loss or as whatever, but it doesn't really matter to your body. These things will all register as you're starving me. And our body, we have to remember, doesn't know, right? If you are like a sad little peasant kid from the 1500s who hasn't had bread in 3 days and is truly starving, or if you're living in 2024 in perfect abundance with a fridge full of food and you're just choosing not to eat it very often, it doesn't know. So the kind of signals that you send to your body really, really matter. And in the short term, and I'm going to bring this back to our main topic, which is like, we got to be thinking more long term. In the short term, these almost always work because if you only
if you take a drug at the very beginning, it's going to be effective.
If you grossly undereat, you're going to lose weight. But what happens in the long term? What happens when you have to get off your Ozempic? Because at some point you have to stop taking that drug. What happens 2 years into only eating one meal every day? What happens, in all of these situations?
What does happen? Someone who's been eating 1 meal a day, what does happen?
Well, I mean, at a certain point, your body is going to get smart to the fact that not enough food is coming in, or it's not coming in frequently enough, and it's going to downregulate. And we've talked about this a little bit on previous shows, how your metabolism will come down eventually. There's a little lag time. That's where you lose the weight. It will come down to meet you where your intake is at. And this is why, in the long haul, most people who take approaches like this with chronic, just drastic undereating end up gaining all their weight back and often then some. And nobody's nobody's thinking about this, you know, and I don't even see nutritionists and doctors often who seem to understand how metabolism works in the long term. Yeah. But we got to reckon with this, you know. So really, go ahead.
So someone who eats 1 meal a day for 2 years, their metabolism will eventually adjust to that.
Sometimes sooner than that. 2 years is arbitrary.
Down regulate.
Yep.
And which means that 1 meal a day, you've seen people gain weight on that 1 meal a day because now your metabolism is like, oh, you aren't eating that much, and any food we get, we just need to store it into fat.
100%. And there's more than just that. Usually when you're in that starved, stressed state, you end up with very, very dysregulated cortisol, which also adds to weight gain. And you also end up with usually, and I see this a ton with the OMAD people or the people who are just fasting like crazy, you can end up eventually with some really, really big dysregulation with your leptin and your ghrelin. And those are your hunger and satiety hormones. So
hunger and what?
And satiety, that's just fullness. So leptin is the hormone that your body releases normally to tell you you're full.
Okay.
Like you want regular levels of leptin. You eat your dinner and then you get that leptin and you're like, okay, I'm good.
Like you're done.
And then ghrelin is your hunger hormone. It comes in and it's like, eat. Okay. And our body.
That's my favorite.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I like that hormone a lot.
You like ghrelin, yeah. And our body, I mean, God designed it so amazingly.
The
G hormones. God designed our body so amazingly well. There are so many built-in mechanisms, including the down regulation of metabolism, these hunger hormones, all these other things that will kick in if you undereat long enough so that you don't die, right? I mean, and so here you are, you know.
Your starvation hormones or whatever.
Yeah, you come off of your Ozempic, you haven't been eating for very much for a year. Your metabolism is way lower. You've probably wasted muscle. That's another thing. When you lose this much weight so rapidly, you
become weaker.
Well, and your overall muscle mass is lower, so your metabolic rate is lower, right? And your body is, your hunger cues are through the roof. Yeah, that's what happens.
And so you've worked with ladies who've either been on this 1 meal a day diet or have been on some sort of where they're eating 800 calories a day, something very low.
Very low, yeah.
And they're like, I don't understand, why am I not losing weight?
Right.
I'm hardly eating anything. And then you tell them, the term is, I think, reverse dieting. Yeah. You tell them, it's like, well, you got to start actually eating more so your metabolism picks back up.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And then you've seen them lose weight.
Yeah, 100%. And it seems counterintuitive, right? To be like, I'm going to start eating more and I'm going to
not eating more sugar, not eating more of the right foods.
You got to eat right. You got to do it right. And not always, sometimes people will actually lose weight as they eat more because you're finally cueing your body. Because remember, it's just signals, right? To your body. That food is here.
And you aren't starving anymore.
Stress can come down. Stress can spin down. Metabolism can feel like, okay, I can wake back up. Thyroid might be like, we can turn back on again. So sometimes you actually do see weight loss, and I've seen it many times. Other times, the reverse diet is painful, and you just slowly titrate your calories up. You have to be very meticulous about it. It is not fun to do. Yeah.
But because you could gain weight too.
Well, and sometimes you do. Yeah. Sometimes it's inevitable. And if you work with someone who really knows what they're doing, usually you try to keep that weight gain very minimal. But you have to pay the metabolic piper at some point.
What do you mean the metabolic piper?
I mean, the bill comes due. You can kick the can down the road by I'm going to do Optavia for a while and just only eat 1,000 calories a day, or I'm going to do GLP-1 for a while and only eat but at a certain point.
If you come off the drug,
you're going to come off of it, and you have to meet your metabolism where it is at. And the only way out of that corner or that hole that you're in is you have to reverse diet out, and it's hard. You know, and I think it is, but it's just important that we understand how metabolism in the body works. Okay. That these are all things that God put into our body so that we will not starve. And it's how people historically who have been in very, very, very bad situations, concentration camps, famines.
They stay alive. Yeah,
exactly. So it's been a blessing to the human race.
They probably aren't using the restroom much.
Until right now. Oh, yeah. I mean, they weren't thriving.
Right.
But they were surviving.
Yeah.
You know, they were surviving.
Which is what their starvation hormones kick in.
Exactly. So I just want to be clear. I'm not against any hack or method that will give you an edge. I'm all about it, but so far, as far as I can tell, we have not figured out how to hack the way metabolism works. And so whatever decision that you might make with regards to your diet or a program you're going to do or whatever, think long term. What is my exit strategy? Where is this going to lead me in 5 years? Because the quick fix is nice, but we all know that person who, and maybe it's been you, who gains, loses, loses, like the yo-yo diet. That's a really, it's a popular trope for a reason, for a reason. So anyways, that's the starvation diet warning. And we all need to probably be thinking.
And again, I'm still
more long-term.
Starvation diet. You're talking like, maybe some sort of fasting diet or some sort of very low meal diet. Totally. Every day.
Anything, any diet or drug or meal replacement that causes you to be eating way less than you should be eating. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Your body doesn't care and your body doesn't know. And it can look, obviously, there's nuances. It can look different for different people. Obviously, like a 5-foot woman who's not super active isn't going to need to eat as much as, a 250-pound guy who's really active. So obviously, there's nuance from person to person. But I will tell you that when women come to me eating less than 1,000 calories a day, which is not very much, are overweight and are weight loss resistant, that's what happened to them. Okay. That's what happened to them. And I will say this, and this is what I said, pin the 90s thing. A lot of especially women listening right now, I know that what I'm saying has resonated with you because you've tried all this stuff. And this is the problem is that...
The Jenny Craig.
90s diet culture was insane.
Really?
It was insane.
Why was it insane?
I don't know why. I just know it happened. I mean, I don't know if it's because everybody wanted to look like Kate Moss. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But it was like... weird cleanses from Oprah. All the girls who came out of the 90s, right? Like, which would be like, 30s and 40s now. That's kind of where we would, that's kind of our age now. You're coming into your 30s and 40s, unless you are lucky and you just put your head in the sand and you didn't do any of those weird diets, you're coming into your 30s and 40s already metabolically messed up because of all the weird, crazy diets that you did a long time ago. So I understand if you come into your, you're 38 or you're 42 and you're like already only eating 1,200 calories a day, you're overweight, you feel weight loss resistant, the temptation is going to be to do one of these extreme things. Like, I got to do a GLP-1. I got to do OMAD. There's nothing else I can do that will work for me. But really, that will make it worse long term. Right. Because again, you got to pay the bill at some point. What you need is a reverse diet. It's hard, but it's true, and it's the only way out. So that's just kind of where
I'm on the reverse diet constantly.
Just the reverse. I mean, Gabe's been reversing his whole life.
It's my favorite diet.
Really high.
Eat more food.
Exactly. It's so high. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we can move on a little bit. I will say some of the same concepts are also true for the people who are ketoing or carnivoring really, really hard with no breaks over time. And we already kind of touched on this pretty well.
Yeah, but I think in this context it'd be helpful to
I
flesh
feel
out a little bit.
They're so popular that I feel like it bears mentioning again in terms of just thinking short-term versus long-term. But for those of you who, it's so hard because when you come to a diet like keto or you come to a diet like carnivore, they can be so effective and good and beneficial in the short term. And I'm all for those a lot of times in the short term, like I've already said. But you have to think beyond that. You have to think, okay, just because something is helpful in the short term does not mean that that amount of, potency and helpfulness is going to stay the same. And in a lot of cases, especially with women, especially with active women, you do too much of that for too long, and it actually ends up hurting you. As we talked about.
Because your body starts to stress out because it's not getting bread or other, basically, it's not experiencing a full slate of food,
it's
a rounded plate.
Yeah, it's not getting a lot of things. I mean, just the continual lack of carbohydrate with the keto diet really will put your body in a stress state. And again, you can cruise there for a while. And like we said, our body can handle quite a bit.
It can adapt pretty well.
It really can. And in the short term, maybe the benefits that you're reaping from that outweigh the negatives. But at a certain point, things attenuate, and then those negatives really come back to get you. So you just see some serious adrenal dysfunction, like we talked about. Sleep starts to go, and I see a lot of dysregulated thyroid here, like a lot, especially again with women, even more so with active women. And remember, you guys, if when I say dysregulated thyroid, if you're like, that doesn't really mean anything to me, I don't care. T3 is your active thyroid hormone. And if your T3 downregulates, if your body's like, trouble, danger, things aren't good, we're not getting enough carbs, we're not getting enough food, we're working out too hard. Just replace the word T3 with metabolism. Okay. So that's, if you think of the symptoms of hypothyroidism, it is weight gain, oftentimes seemingly for no reason, weight loss resistance, you're puffy, you're swollen, you're constipated, your hair's falling out, your energy's low, you're cold all the time. It is awful. And I don't care how great your diet is, how many workouts you do a day. If you are severely hypothyroid, if your T3 is in like the mid 2s or lower, you will not lose weight. You will not lose weight, and it does not matter what you do. That's how powerful that T3 is. So taking care of your thyroid is very, very important. And the thing about the keto diet is number one, a certain amount of insulin is required to convert T4 to T3. So that's part of the problem. Yeah. And the other thing you guys need to think about.
Wait. So are you saying the carnivore diet will actually hurt the production and conversion of T4 to T3? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, both. I think both will. Absolutely. Just because, again, it's part of it is just part of the overall downregulating of metabolic rate, and thyroid is part of that. And then part of it also is that you do need some insulin to convert T4 into the active T3, which again is basically synonymous with your metabolism, right? Your metabolic rate. And the second thing you guys need to think about is that a good amount of your T4 to T3 conversion happens in your liver. And if you are eating a super, super high fatty diet for a really long time and not compensating by taking really good care of your liver, eating bitter foods, cruciferous, things that are going to help your liver handle all that fat. Yeah. And then if you lay on top of that, what a lot of hardcore keto people do, which is like actually eat a lot of like kind of highly processed keto products, you're also going to have a huge burden on your thyroid because of that. So just all those reasons combined, you see a lot of thyroids tanking long term, which again, if your goal, if the reason you came to those diets was like, I want to feel better, I want to lose weight, maybe with carnivore, it's also tied to your gut. Long term, you're going to run into some problems. So we just need to be thinking long term with those things. Yeah.
So basically these, we're kind of talking about more like keto and carnivore. Yep. Those diets, because it's kind of only focused on more protein and that kind of food intake, you're going to miss out on other nutrients over time that will actually, in the long run, affect you and hurt you. Because you're kind of getting a full nutrient plate. Yeah.
And again, with the ketogenic diet, it tends to be a little higher fat, moderate protein. Right. There's different versions of it. Carnivore, you can go higher fat carnivore or lower fat carnivore. It's just a little bit more of a, you're pulling everything out except for the most part, meat and animal products, right? Yeah. So, and again, short term, okay. But yeah, you're missing all the benefits of the phenols, the fibers, the plant foods that will help protect your liver, long term, give you a more beneficial gut back, like all, and then also just carbs spin down stress. And this is one of the reasons that people who are doing keto or people who are fasting a ton, they can't sleep, is because they have way too much cortisol going on in their body at night. And this is why if you feed someone carbs at night,
they sleep better.
It helps them sleep. Exactly. And again, I'm talking long term, you guys. I'm not saying don't do this for 3 months to heal your gut. That's perfectly fine. It might be exactly what you need to be doing, but we need an exit strategy and we need to think long term. And just because something is good right now does not mean that it will continue to be good or a net positive in your life at the 10-year mark, right?
Which is you got me on the man diet or the man plan, whatever you want to call it, where it's like I eat protein, eggs in the morning. Yeah, some sort of protein, maybe a little salad at lunch or something like that, and then at night we'll have bread or pasta with our meal or something like that. We basically, so we're have more of a normal plate at night.
We're achieving balance but still trying to get the best of both kind of ways of eating at different times throughout the day. Exactly. And I'm going to say one more. I'll say one more thing about diet, and then we can move to exercise because I don't want to leave exercise out of the long-term thinking plan. Okay, but. So moving away from maybe the starvation type diets and then the very popular keto carnivore, if that's not you and you're more of the like macro counter,
carb counter person,
or if it fits your macros, have you ever heard of that?
No.
I know some of you have. It's a really popular little phrase, more in like the bodybuilding or the macro counting world. Okay. That basically can mean that, hey, listen, you just need to eat this many calories, this much should be fat, this much should be protein, this much should be carbs. And as long as you're checking those boxes, you can fill it with Pop-Tarts or whatever you want. Yeah. If it fits your macros. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay. Now, I know a lot of us understand that like you could take that way too far and, you can't just,
eat ice cream for cereal.
Like all day eat junk. But there's a lot of us who I think are kind of taking that approach, that kind of just, if it's your macros approach, eating a lot of processed food, a lot of food with like really, really, really long ingredient lists with like kind of horrifying things in there, and probably feeling and looking fine. And I will say, especially young people. So if you're like 25 and you're just eating you're drinking like 5 Diet Mountain Dews a day because it's 0 calories and it's not going to affect your total calorie intake, that kind of approach. And I find that younger people really tend to fall. I was that way. I mean, I'm not judging. I ate terrible.
Because they're invincible.
I know, but again, what's the theme of today? The theme is think long term. Like what is that kind of eating, especially if you're eating like majority that kind of food, which some people do. What is that going to do to your liver in 10 years, to your inflammation levels in 10 years, to your insulin resistance in 10 years? Like it will catch up to you. It catches up to most people. Yeah. But it's so easy if you're like, well, I'm looking good now, I'm just going to keep, eating all this garbage and it fits my macros and it's working. I look good and, I get the selfie. I look good in I got my beach body. There's nothing wrong with that. But still, I really encourage you guys to think long term because this stuff does build up in our body. And these habits are hard to break. Those kinds of foods are very addictive and you can end up with a lot of problems. And it's so much better to be more on the preventative side than to come back around when you're 45 and insulin resistant and have high blood pressure and all these scary words that the doctor is starting to throw around at you, because of years of eating garbage. So do think about that. And
that's why a lot of people say in their 30s is like, oh man, everything changed. I hit 35 or whatever and everything changed.
Right.
And well, now, I used to love drinking Dr. Pepper every day.
Right. I know.
I can't do that. Right. When I was skinny, I love drinking Dr. Pepper every day. It's still my favorite soda to drink.
Yeah.
But you get 35 and all of a sudden it's like, oh, something's changed.
Yeah.
And then now you got all these bad habits that you got to deal with.
And it's exactly the habit thing is really hard to break. Yeah, for sure. So that's just something to think about too for those if it fits your macros, people. Yeah. Do you want to talk about exercise a little bit?
I think we're gonna.
Okay, we need to. We need to. It's not all just about the diet when it comes to thinking long term. Obviously, movement, exercise factors in. And there's so much that we could probably say here. And I'm sure we'll do more podcasts in future about strength training and, all the things. But just in terms of what we're specifically talking about today, which is like, don't be short-sighted. Think long-term. Ladies, I'm going to talk to you first, and then I'll talk to the gentlemen. Ladies, the biggest thing, like if I could say one thing to you as a collective group in terms of exercise, the biggest blunder that I see in terms of just being so short-sighted with regards to the kind of exercise that you decide to do is I see us doing way, 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 way too much cardio and or high-intensity training and not enough strength training. And I know that's kind of, you probably knew that was coming. It's kind of a thing. People kind of know this, but it's still a problem. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about it. And I just want to say, I'm not anti-cardio at all. I think cardiovascular health is very important. And actually, that's going to be one of my big takeaways for the guys. But for us ladies, a couple of things that we need to think about is, number one, it's not a great or smart strategy to have to run 5 miles a day to maintain your level of fitness and the body that you want. Okay. It's not a good plan. If you're 20 and you don't have a care in the world and that's working for you, I'm going to tell you right now, eventually you're going to get married. Yeah. Eventually you're going to have kids. Yep. Time will go to zero sometimes. And then you're also going to age. And you're going to get to a certain point where pounding the pavement 5 miles a day is not going to be a good plan.
Start wearing down your knees
and it's
or whatever.
Even more not going to be a good plan or a doable plan for you if you haven't been strength training the whole time to kind of support your joints. So there's that. Okay. And then I also want to kind of talk about what steady state cardio. So that would just be that person who just does the 5 mile run every day, who gets on a spin bike, every day or whatever. And we're just doing tons and tons of steady state cardio, usually without a lot of strength, kind of evening it out. Usually it's just, that's all you're doing. Yeah. Some things to think about is number one, steady state cardio, when especially done to excess, wastes muscle. By nature. Our bodies are adaptive. We've already talked about that.
That's the marathon body.
Exactly. All you got to do is look at I love this. I love doing this every time I guess it's the Summer Olympics rolls around. Yeah. And you watch the Olympic marathoners running.
Right.
And, I mean,
And they look like they're dehydrated. They look like their muscles are starving. They look like almost like a third world country citizen.
I have nothing but respect for those people. I mean, no one has like willpower and a pain tolerance like an Olympic marathoner. No one. But yeah, I mean, like they're so thin and emaciated, and they have to be. Their bodies have adapted to that because of the requirements of their sport, right? And of course, that's an extreme. Most of us are not Olympic level.
You kind of wonder how those marathoners are going to be when they're 45, 50 years old.
Not great a lot of the time. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then I want you guys to think about what those Olympic...
Thinking long term?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But think about the Olympic sprinters. Look at their bodies.
Their bodies are thicker.
I mean, they are like muscled up. They're like feeling great. The ladies have their nails done. Like it's like a completely different
their hair's
world.
done. They're doing a 100-yard dash or whatever.
Divas. They're divas for sure. But like, look at the muscle mass on those women's bodies. So I'm just using that to illustrate what chronic cardio will. That's the trajectory. Is like muscle wasting. And ladies, we need lean mass. We need it for so many reasons, especially as we head into our older years, menopause and beyond.
You need lean mass?
Lean mass is just a nicer, I've learned to say lean mass instead of muscle because it doesn't scare girls. It's all the same, you guys. Muscle, lean mass. Mass on your body that's not fat, okay? We need it. We need it long-term for metabolism. We need it for insulin sensitivity. We need it for injury prevention. We need it so we can pick up our grandchildren and not get hurt. And again, you might not care right now. You might be like, I just want to be thin. I just want to hit that number on the scale.
I'm just healthy.
I just want the beach body. I want to fit into my jeans. And I understand that. And I don't even have a problem with that. But if your exercise routine is getting you the thin body that you want now at the expense of the kind of muscle mass that you are going to need when you're older, I would say you need to reassess that. Okay.
That's helpful.
Just reassess it. Other things that doing too much cardio or high intensity exercise, I would include HIIT class, CrossFit, anything where your heart rate's through the roof the whole time you do it. You are going to look at just a decent amount of upregulation of hunger, and you are going to see metabolic downregulation just because, again, our body's going to adapt to what you're asking it to do. So if you're going out and you're running 10 miles a day, you're doing 2 CrossFit workouts a day, oftentimes the body's like, well, this person's insane. And remember, your body doesn't know. It doesn't know if it's a war zone and you're running from a tank or you're running from a bear or you're just running 5 miles on the treadmill because you ate 2 muffins yesterday and you feel guilty about it. Like, it doesn't know. So again, we have to think of what signals are we sending our body, not just with nutrition, but also with exercise. And again, not against cardio, but we need to have balance. And I see a lot of women skewing their overall exercise way too heavily towards either high intensity, running, which is just another way of saying cardio, high intensity exercise and steady state cardio. So,
and is that, basically what you're getting at is like, you're going to stress your body out. If you're constantly stressing your body out through running 5 miles a day and, it's going to have certain ramifications with, if you connect it all together, like if you got the wrong kind of diet and then you're constantly stressing your body out running 5 miles a day, then you'll start seeing collateral damage, like in hair falling out. You said earlier that your body would metabolically downregulate. And is that meaning that because you're stressing your body so much out that your metabolism's trying to figure out any way it can to kind of store fat or trying to keep you not from starvation, basically, is what you're saying.
And I mean the adrenal response, the elevated cortisol that you'll get from starving yourself or not eating carbs for a really long time.
On top of running 5 miles a day or something like that.
Excessive stress, which a lot of times women were doing all of that. And that, like we talked about, that's, I think, how I tanked my thyroid. Your metabolic
You're
rate.
being a mom. You're running 5 miles a day.
I mean, let alone
you're taking care of a house.
Not sleeping well.
You're married to Gabe Wrench.
Married to Gabe Wrench, you guys. Somebody
high stress.
Book me in a spa.
100%. High stress.
It is high stress. So you just, again, you're very right. It often is a combination of all the things. Metabolism will downregulate as a self-preservation move, right? Because we're like, what the heck is going on? Why are you doing this to this body? And cortisol comes up, adrenals get dysregulated, and then you have the thyroid piece also, and it really can be kind of a catastrophe. And it is so common. Like I almost, it's like you can almost, every girl that walks through the door that talks to me who has this story, CrossFit, running, keto, I'm like, let's look at your thyroid. Let's look at your cortisol.
Right.
Like, are you weight loss resistant?
Yeah.
And she's like, yep. And it's just
all three of those.
Where our bodies in some ways are so similar and so it's so predictable, you know. Anyways,
right.
so
interesting.
We need the strength training, ladies, one way or another. It can be, you can start with just body weight in your house. Long term, get yourself either a nice home gym or in a gym so that you can work under heavy load. Yes, it's intimidating. There's a steeper learning curve, and you got to learn. This is one of the reasons that personal trainers have jobs everywhere they go, at least the good ones, is because there's a lot to learn, but it is 100% worth it, and it will tack years onto not just your life, but your high quality life, right? And just add to your productivity, add to your vitality, add to your ability to be the fun grandma or great grandma that I'm sure you all want to be.
Yeah,
you know.
Okay, so let's talk men.
Let's talk men.
And before we get into men and exercise, you know, if I had my ideal food pyramid, if I took over the government food pyramid,
oh my gosh,
it would be syrup is in a category itself, you know.
You're not going to put syrup on the top. Dr. Pepper on the top. Oh, scotch. Scotch is high, yeah.
Yeah, it's a high one. And then ice cream. I mean, those are, I think, that takes care of your dairy, alcohol, and your nature.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I got it all.
It's straight.
I got it.
Mark Sisson would approve. Oh my gosh, it's a good thing.
Syrup.
It's a good thing.
It's a food category, all itself.
Scary. Okay.
And scotch.
All right, let's talk to the guys.
Okay.
This will be very simple and very basic, and it's going to basically just be opposite of what I told the ladies because there are
more cardio.
I mean, there are exceptions.
Yeah.
You know, there are
This is
exceptions.
mean.
There's some girls who love to rip it up in the gym and they hate cardio. You know, there are those girls, but I'm just speaking to generalities. Yeah, and there's some guys who come from a running background or a triathlon background, so this wouldn't apply.
And they got to watch out in the same way that you were just talking earlier about cardio.
Totally, and they need more strength training. But I'd say more often than not, for the guys who are exercising, and obviously I'm only talking to the people who are exercising. There's some people it's like you just need to start doing something, like anything. But for those of you who are exercising, a lot of times guys, per usual, love to lift weights. They love, they love to be in the gym with the bros and, drinking the pre-workout and getting all the gains. And every day is chest day and, and honestly, keep going. I don't really have a problem. And I think, and it's fun and it's good to be strong, but cardiovascular health does matter. And as far as I know, heart disease still is the number one killer of Americans. It has been for a long time, and I don't know if that stat has changed or not. I believe it
next
still is.
Next to abortion.
Well, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah. That's true. But heart disease is a very real thing. And so, again, you might be fine in your 30s, just doing your curls, and it's like chest and back and chest and buys and, legs once a week, just like whatever it is that you're going to do. And you might look great in the mirror. You might feel good. Everything might be going fine. But where are you going to be? What is your blood work going to look like? In 10 years, we're dealing with this right now.
I just took my blood work 3 months ago, and I'm taking it again.
Yeah, we'll report back.
And it wasn't good 3 months ago.
It wasn't good.
Hopefully, it's gonna be better because we already made some adjustments, but we'll see.
Yeah, totally. And again, we'll talk about the man plan. We can talk all about that. But like, what is your blood pressure, your triglycerides, your glucose, and your insulin going to look like? In 10 years when you get winded walking up the stairs? And what kind of grandpa are you going to be when you can't go on a hike with your kids because
your grandkids,
you're just this huge guy who can't move? So, dudes, cardiovascular fitness is a relative term. You do not need to go do half marathons if you don't want to, and that's completely fine. But I would say at least start with walking. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts. If you've got your strength routine dialed in, 30 minutes a day, lunch break, after dinner, at least walk. And on top of that, if you're ambitious enough or, maybe you're just thinking long term, once a week, adding some kind of sprint workout in, super phenomenal. Wonderful for your cardiovascular system.
So not like 5 miles, sprint.
A sprint. Yeah, a sprint. And there's a lot of reasons. We could do a podcast just on cardio, honestly, because there's a lot of things there. But sprinting is, as we talked about when we talked about the way the different body types of different types of Olympian runners look, sprinting is way more synergistic with maintaining muscle mass. So in terms of longevity and holding, figuring out.
So it gets the heart rates up while you get the benefit of heart rate up, blood flowing, and while keeping the muscle mass.
Yeah, pushes the heart and the lungs very, very hard, obviously, super anaerobic, but it's just way more synergistic with keeping muscle mass, and it's super functional. So I just,
And guys like to keep their muscle mass.
Yes, they do. And there's nothing wrong with it. I want to keep my muscle mass.
Yeah.
And I sprint once a week. And I would, if I was going to choose, if I had to miss one, my sprints or my one steady state, like the 5 miler that I do once a week, I would be like, I'm keeping my sprints.
Yeah.
I see that as way more of an asset to me, both now and in the long term. And it keeps
Because the good thing about sprinting is you could sprint and then you have a cigarette rest break, and then you can sprint again.
You get a pull,
and then you get a pull, and then
I mean, just whatever.
Get right, and your heart rate's still getting up. I mean, it's amazing.
And I mean, smokers are really thin, so I think that the sprinting smoking combo
it's gonna work. It's gonna work.
I'm gonna remember that.
I like breaks. You can't get a break on a 5 miler.
No, you don't get a break.
Yeah.
No one gets to smoke when they're running 5 miles. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Those are my big examples. We can kind of get into we've talked about conclusions kind of all the way through, but really there really are, as far as I can tell, no quick fixes that are going to also work long term, right? You really need to be thinking, okay, is this a good choice for me right now? But also, just importantly, where is this going to have me in 5 years? Where is this going to have me in 10 years? In terms of my metabolic rate, in terms of my lean mass, in terms of, where my hormones will be, will I even be able to sleep? You need to be thinking about all those things. Oftentimes, ladies especially, the reverse diet is your only way out. So no matter how tempted or desperate you might feel, and I completely understand that, you're gonna need to work with someone, unless you really got this sort of thing dialed in on your own, to slowly build back your metabolism. That is the way out, to get you back to where you're healthy. Right. You can eat like a normal person and manage a healthy weight. We all need to incorporate balance. And we've talked about this before. That's balance in nutrition, right? And also balance in our fitness routine. So if you're skewed really hard just towards strength, but again, you can't barely walk up the stairs, that's imbalance.
Right.
If you're only running or you're only spinning, but you can't even squat half your body weight, that's imbalance.
Yeah.
If you are maybe in the gym lifting weights, but you haven't bothered to rehab your core after having 3 or 4 babies. That's imbalance. It will come back to bite you. So we need balance. And remember, with our nutrition, we talked about this in, I think, our second podcast, achieving balance, we're talking over the long haul. You can have seasons of imbalance. You can do 6 months of carnivore if that's what it takes to calm your gut down. You can do, a season of keto, or more fasting if it helps your insulin resistance. There's nothing wrong with that. And even if you look at balance in a day, we just talked about the way we have Gabe eating right now. Yeah. Every single meal is not perfectly balanced, but over the course of 24 hours
or whatever,
or over the course of a week, we're achieving some kind of balance.
Yeah.
And that should be the long-term goal for a lot of us. And that really, as far as I can tell, is how you sustain health in the long term.
And that's more enjoyable too. I mean, because we used to have me on a plan where I didn't eat any bread or carbs or anything, and I just didn't like it. I just I just like bread,
Totally.
I want to eat, and plus I've already said this before, but any diet that conflicts with the Lord's Supper, I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
He's a hard patient. He has a lot of rules, like it has to include the Lord's Supper.
It has to include bread and wine. Any diet for a man has to include bread and wine.
And cigarettes. And so it's been really hard, okay? It's been hard to be married to him and come up with a plan. So if the plan works for Gabe, it will probably work for anyone.
Yeah.
And that's a promise. Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. That's it. Think long term. Think post-millennial.
Yeah.
About your health.
Yeah. Make sure you guys got any questions probably from this episode. Renchmedia@gmail.com. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Waterbreak TV. Waterbreak TV. YouTube.com/Waterbreak TV. And then, of course, you can catch us. Download the Fight Laugh Feast app. That's really where we prefer you to consume our content. Get us off YouTube and get us off all the places that generally like to cancel us or shadow ban us, and which is what happened to me and us over the number of years. So anyways, thank you for tuning in to Waterbreak. We're gonna have a week off because we got some spring break stuff we're gonna be working on, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. So thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.